writing takes is simply a huge amount of self-discipline and overcoming that daily fear. You're driving down a highway at night and you can only see as far as your headlights. I don't know what I'm going to see as I drive down that dark night road, but I'll see it. But I got to sit down and start. And I wrote Adam and the Witch Queen in 2022. I decided to self-publish it. So the reason why I'm on the podcast today is kind of to talk people through the self-publishing process.
You are your business, you are your product. And
I had to format the inside of the book myself. I mean, so I had to buy software that did that for me and do, all the research. Inspiration exists, but she has to find you working.
Hey Caroline, thank you so much for being here. It's really a pleasure to have in this podcast episode. I've been chasing you a bit to be in this podcast, and it's a really pleasure to have you here. But for my audience who doesn't know who you are, can you tell us a bit who Carolyn Johnson is?
Sure. Gladly, it's great to be on, and thanks for having me. So we met because I wrote a book and I was promoting it in person at Indigo at Yonge and Eglinton. So we both live in Toronto, and I wrote Adam and the Witch Queen in 2022, and I decided to self-publish it. So the reason why I'm on the podcast today is kind of to talk people through the self-publishing process, my decision to self-publish or not. It was a bit of a leap for me because normally I'm a teacher. And so the whole realm of writing a novel and self-publishing was kind of uncharted territory for me. And along the way, listeners are going to hear about my cat and my motorcycle and all the other adventures of 2022. Actually, it was a big year. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Okay, thank you so much. And as you said, we met in a really not prepared situation.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my daughter was passing by and you were like, yeah, do you want to see my book? And I remember picking it up. It's like my daughter was, I don't know, 6 ish. And I pick it up and I'm like, I'm going to buy this book because I just met the author. And weirdly enough, I said, I'm going to read this book before my daughter does, because it's not that I have anything like concerning with the book. I just like the cover of the book, and I'm like, I actually want to read it before she does. And I really liked it. And weirdly enough, I wrote to you, and that's how we started talking.
Yeah.
And when you told me in that communication that you were a self-published author, that got me into asking you a lot of questions. I remember that's how we kind of met.
Yeah.
And I found this story so compelling. And it was one of the reasons why I wanted you to be in here to share a bit of this story. And I remember I asked you this, but how come from a teacher you decided to write, and how was this process?
I had the idea of writing a novel when I was in maybe second or third year of university, but I didn't understand enough about the process to kind of know how to bring a project like that to completion. So it took a long, long time. Like we're talking almost 15 years before I finally decided, okay, I'm going to do this. And the funny thing is, for anyone who's interested in kind of personal development, the real moment where I decided that I needed to get serious about writing was when I walked through the Marie Kondo tidying your house process. One of the things I was tidying were knitting machines. I don't know if you've ever seen a knitting machine. It's about 1 meter long. It's full of these little spiky things that the wool kind of weaves in and out of. And in order to become good at using a knitting machine, you have to invest hours and hours and hours. And I looked at this knitting machine and I thought, okay, I was literally at a crossroads. That I could learn to use the knitting machine and really get good at knitting, or I could just sell the dang thing and get into writing again, because that's what I really know in my heart that I should be doing. So that's what happened. So I sold the knitting machines, not for a ton of money or anything, but I got them out of my life. And then later that summer, I sat down and I wrote the first draft of what my readers are going to identify as my second novel, which is not yet published. So that was a great experience because it showed me that one of the things that writing takes is simply a huge amount of self-discipline and overcoming that daily fear that when you sit down to do the work, you're not going to know what to do. But then in 2021, I had a bit of a speed bump with work, and I ended up, let's just say euphemistically, taking a sabbatical. And so I had time. I had hours and hours and hours a day where I thought, you know what, this is brilliant. This is kind of unexpected, but I now have the time to sit down and give a new writing project the attention that it requires. So I had like just these long stretches, like a 4-hour, 6-hour window in a day where I didn't have a time limit on that creative process. And so that's when I decided to say, okay, I'm gonna turn these lemons into lemonade. I know it sounds cheesy, but you got to do it. And I sat down to write this sort of second novel that was brewing. I think your question is actually, why did I decide to publish it myself as well? And so while I was writing, of course, you're thinking, well, I mean, you got a stack of printed pages. That's great, but you tell a story so that other people can enjoy it. How do I get that out there? And a friend at the time said, oh, you got to call my other friend. She's self-published. She used to own a bookstore. She knows everything about self-publishing. So this woman gave me some advice that made self-publishing seem like a no-brainer, seemed like it was all profit and no pain, and you didn't have to wait to find a literary agent, and you didn't have to go through all the gatekeepers in the system, and all you had to do to recoup your investment was sell 500 books and you'd be away to the races. And I thought, oh, well, that doesn't sound like a lot of books. Well, now I'm like, oh, it sounds like a lot of books. But anyway, so I kind of delved into that world. Another friend, his sister, is a really successful indie, I guess. She published a number of books through a very small publishing company, so she'd have to do a lot of the marketing in the same way that a fully self-published person would. So she gave me some great advice. People are really generous, I think, in this field, with advice and time and stuff. I thought, okay, well, I'll just see where it goes. And so I decided to self-publish, and then there it was. I don't know if I've made the right decision.
Oh, why not? It's like I got to know you and I got to know both of your stories
Yes.
because, well, as a secret, I have already read the other book too, which hasn't been published. So yeah, no spoiler for me. But there are some nuggets that I want to dig a bit more. So should we thank your how do you call the machine that you sold?
The knitting machine.
The knitting machine. So should we thank that knitting machine for getting you started on this?
Pretty much. Marie Kondo. Let's thank Marie Kondo.
Yeah. All right. Marie Kondo, thank you for that. And so there is one nugget that I want to dig a bit more, which was the self-discipline.
Yes.
You took You sold the machine, thanks Mary Kondo, and then you decided to take the opportunity to start writing. I know about staring at the blank sheet and not knowing what to do. What made you kind of like keep this discipline of setting every little thing? Did you have any kind of trick of the mind to make you every day go and write?
I ended up with some kind of inspirational quotes, one from Pablo Picasso, and he said, "Inspiration exists, but she has to find you working." So that was a good one.
I like that.
Another famous one was the art of writing is the art of applying the seat of the pants to the seat of the chair.
I love it.
Yeah. And then I guess the third one was from Ann Tyler, who's this, great American writer. And she said most writers realize very early on that if they wait for inspiration, they'll never write ever again. I'm paraphrasing loosely. So I realized that there was something that happened when you just overcame that resistance to sitting down. You have your pen or in your hand, or you're ready to start typing at the computer, and you just start. Another writer named Dean Koontz. Have you heard of him? I don't know if he's super popular now, but he certainly was a big American bestseller. And he wrote a book called How to Write Best-Selling Fiction. And I think he describes the process as basically like you're driving down a highway at night and you can only see as far as your headlights. And you just drive to the end of the headlights day after day after day. And so I think now that I'm writing my third novel, I still have that same like fear and resistance to sitting down to writing. But I also have more confidence that when I sit down, I don't know where these ideas will come from. I don't know where the light comes. I don't know what I'm going to see as I drive down that dark night road, but I'll see it. But I got to sit down and start. And nothing happens until I sit down and start.
I like it. Yeah. And I like this analogy of the car because it's like, yeah, forget the GPS. I'm going to take this road. I cannot see the end of it. And I'll just do it. And you keep showing up. And as you were saying, it kind of reminded me like, I'm not like, I don't like to go to the gym, get super pumped. But it's all about consistency. I know a lot of people that they were skinnier than I am and they kept showing up sometimes like 5 10 minutes, and then they would go out and then they would come back the following day, keep showing up, and then you start becoming better. And with everything, I would say, if we are not competent, we get to be pretty good, but you need at least to have the will to get it started.
Yeah,
And I think this is something important. And I love, I don't know, if it felt like you put these quotes around the area that you were writing,
I did.
so
I
you could all,
printed them out. I put them in frames. I just had to keep reminding myself of the
yeah.
truth. Yeah.
And how was the beginning in terms of the first versions, the first pages? Did they
Yeah,
end up in the end?
great question. So there's two kinds of writers out there. I don't know if you've heard the term plotter and pantser. So
No.
okay, so plotter is someone who writes out a roadmap of a plot ahead of time. Maybe makes some character sketches, does a lot of front end planning before sitting down to write. And a pantser is someone who flies by the seat of his pants and just starts to write. So a couple of famous pantsers are Isabel Allende. Do you know? I think she's Chilean or something. She's your audience will, I'm sure, have heard of her. And then, of course, George Martin, who wrote Game of Thrones. He's a pantser. He just sits down and stories flow out of him. I am not a pantser, I'm a plotter. So the first thing that I do is I'll make this sort of general plot, maybe a one word, not one word, a one sentence thing. I use this method, and this might be helpful for anyone who's conceiving of a writing project or any kind of big thing that has interconnected parts. So I used a method called the Snowflake method for Adam and the Witch Queen, which I found so helpful. So you make a one sentence description of the plot and then a one sentence description of the main character. And then you expand, or maybe multiple characters, I forget. Then you expand the one sentence description of the plot into a paragraph. And then you write a paragraph for each character. And then you do a 3-page plot. And then you do more in-depth character analysis. And because these two things are kind of interconnected, like a snowflake that's a fractal, right? So you're taking this fractal design and it's getting bigger and bigger, even though it's the same thing. So that was really helpful for taking an initial idea and expanding it to the point where it was chunked into scenes, and the scenes were chunked into acts, and we could go from there. But still, even with that preparation, I would sit down to write a scene, and I was deathly afraid. Afraid of the suck.
It's funny that you said you're talking about this kind of, I'll call it framework, because the closest experience that I have to this was when I had to write my dissertation during my master's. I'm like, great, I have a possible title. Okay, where do I start?
Yeah.
And one thing that I recall was I kind of created like some chapters, right? In a dissertation or in a thesis, you kind of have like specific kind of chapters that they need to be there. And I said, look, I'm gonna start doing that one right now because I don't know what to write. And then I wrote that one. And then I'm like, oh, I had an idea. Where does this idea belong to there? Oh, I have a reference about that idea that will support my idea. Then I would make the reference, which it seems like somewhat what it did. And in the end, like, that's the closest thing to a book that I have so far. And I'll have my book. You are my inspiration to do that, like to get this started. And I'm pretty sure I'm gonna use this technique again. I will probably be a plotter as well. I try when I write LinkedIn articles or LinkedIn posts to just like, I think I have an idea and then I sit and write. But we're talking about 500, 1,000 words. So I really like this kind of framework that you suggested. And for those who are thinking about it too, maybe that will work. So there is one thing that I wanted to go back in this story is you said that you started writing one book and then you published the second book, and the first book is the one that you haven't published yet.
Let me give a timeline. So I wrote a first draft of, let's call it book 2, in 2016 to 2018. I would write on my summer holidays. So it took me a really long time. I'm not a fast writer. And then in 2021, 2022, I published Adam and the Witch Queen. And then I had learned so much about the writing process from that point that I thought, there are a ton of problems with book 2. Let's go back, and I did a complete redraft. So I didn't even look at anything I had written. I just went with what I knew was happening in my mind. Like I knew the story, I knew the characters, and I just started from the beginning. And I actually cranked out the second draft in probably about 2 months, 3 months, because everything was so clear. I knew what happened next by that point. So it went from being this long, rambling 70,000 word book to being a much tighter 50,000 word book, which is again more appropriate for my middle grade readers.
Why did you choose to publish the second one before of the first one?
Simply because when I started writing it in the fall of 2021, the trajectory was that that was the one that was going to go to print first. And so even before I had started the redraft of book two, I had already hired an editor. I was working with a cover designer. I was doing all my research for getting Adam and the Witch Queen out there. And then I thought, I I now know enough about this process that I'm confident enough to rewrite, to redraft book two. And so I was doing that while all the business side of Adam and the Witch Queen was happening in parallel. But it still doesn't answer
Um,
your question. Why did I choose to do that one first? Um, I don't know. Standalone stories. I didn't necessarily think that. I guess when I was thinking about self publishing, I wasn't thinking about my second novel because I knew it still had a ton of problems to be fixed. Whereas I was much more confident that Adam and the Witch Queen, despite its many flaws, was at least ready for showtime at that stage, kind of in May of 2022.
Maybe it's because I read in the order that you published and the one that you rewrote. For me, kind of I can see the skills acquired in the second one that hasn't been published yet, which I will force you to do it because I really like it.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the process soon. Yeah.
Yeah. And before I go ahead, I really need to ask you something. You're talking about a motorcycle. I know it has nothing to do with this. Like, it's like what?
Well, you know what? Maybe it does. Maybe it
Okay.
does. Because getting my motorcycle license, which happened in September of 2021, so we're talking around the same time that I started to write Adam and the Witch Queen, was one of the hardest and scariest things that I ever did. I mean, I got my motorcycle license so that I could ride a Vespa, and I thought, well, how hard could this be? This thing weighs 250 pounds and it goes 100 kilometers an hour and it's on two wheels and there's no seatbelt. So that's scary. And then my whole family, so my husband and our son, who was only 17 at the time, and me, we all go down to, it was like a motorcycle course in a parking lot near the CNE. And we get on these bikes, and it's not like dependent on you. It has gears that you have to shift. It it has a motor. Like there's other motorcycles around you. You have to not fall over, which I actually did, and drop the bike. Anyway, so I think the more we do hard things, the easier it is to do other hard things. So who knows? Maybe somewhere deep in the psyche, the fact that I got my motorcycle license was, you know, proof to myself that I was able to do something that seemed scary.
I really love this that you mentioned about hard things because I kind of believe in that. And what I've been trying to do lately is to try harder things, things that make me really uncomfortable. And somehow it kind of shifts, as you said, like something that for me was super hard before is like, yeah, now I can do that thing, which is way harder. So
Mm.
this is not a big, a big challenge anymore. And I didn't know about this whole motorcycle thing. But yeah, these kind of challenges that I've been trying as well, it gives this effect that you were mentioning. Like suddenly writing, it's not that big of a deal. maybe all I need now for my own book is to kind of try to get a motorcycle license as well. And in talking about challenges, I know you mentioned some of the challenges that you had to publish, and even challenges post publishing. So can you tell me a bit more about these challenges and how you overcame them?
Yeah, so I would divide challenges into kind of two main groups. You've got the creative challenges, and then you have the business challenges. And we talked a lot about the creative challenges already, like just the fear, the resistance, making the time, the self discipline, the all that kind of thing. But for me, I started to encounter other business challenges, which are simply like you don't know what you don't know. And again, it really felt like I was driving in the dark with these things, and I would learn one thing and then I realized I had to learn something else, and on and on. So I guess the first challenge was, do I go traditional, go trad, as they say in the business, and find an agent, or approach various smaller publishing houses with my manuscript directly? Do I learn how to write a query letter? Do I learn how to write a synopsis? And I ended up doing that, actually, because I thought, well, why don't I try both and see which one ends up being the most productive? And then I had to eventually learn all of the business side of self-publishing. So I had to, when your work is accepted by a publishing house, they're willing to take a bet on you. They'll provide you with an editor. They'll provide you normally with a cover designer who's in line with kind of their branding look. They pay all those expenses up front, but your book sales are going to have to recoup those, and so you're not really going to see any money until you've, in a sense, paid the publisher back for the what they've advanced to you. Um, and so, thankfully, my aunt was an editor. That was her, main career, and she ended up teaching editing toward the end of her career. And so she was able to refer me to, I believe, a truly excellent editor who was familiar with the kind of indie world. And so after that, it was just a matter of paying for the editor, right? You're responsible for the upfront costs when you're self-publishing. And then I had to find a cover designer because everybody says, the packaging is super important. That's kind of a funny story. So I was in a Winners one day, and they, by the cash, they had this display of books, and I saw one that I liked, and I thought, oh, who actually did the illustration? So I found her name on the back in tiny little print. I looked her up online, and she was represented. She was a UK artist, but she was represented by a New York agency. So I went on the website of this New York agency, and I found someone else's work that I liked even better. So I actually contacted the agency directly. And I said, hey, this is my project. Here are, how do I start? Where do we even begin with this? And so she said, okay, send me your top three, send me your budget, and we'll see if we can, if one of them would be willing to take you on. Well, the first guy was actually really far out of my price range. He's so famous in the UK. I don't know if I guess I gravitated toward these English illustrators for whatever reason. But this guy's so famous. He's done like postage stamps, so out of my price range. But I found someone who was willing to take the project on, Rob Ball, and he did absolutely. I just love this cover. I'm going to show it again. I think he did such a great job of capturing my vision and understanding what the book was all about. And he even hand lettered the text. And if you notice, there's a little paper airplane in there, which is an integral part of the story. So he did just such an amazing job. But that was quite a long process. Obviously we just chatted over Zoom, and we had to create a mood board. It was such an interesting experience, But even within that, I had to learn, like, don't laugh at me, but I had to learn how to send a wire transfer in US dollars. Like, you don't know what you don't know, right? It's not hard, but it's just something I never done before. I had to format the inside of the book myself. I mean, so I had to buy software that that did that for me, and do all the research that goes. Okay, if I'm going to be shelling out hundreds of dollars, I want to be sure that I like the product. And then there was navigating the whole back end of the distribution. So I ended up going with a company called IngramSpark, and they specialize. Maybe, I don't know. It's like something we can put in the show notes for people who want to check it out. But IngramSpark is a huge distributor, and they are great because small booksellers will order directly through Ingram. Whereas if you decide to self-publish through Amazon, you're limiting yourself. I mean, obviously the Amazon customer base is enormous, but if you want your book to be in like bookstores like Indigo or your local bookstore, they won't touch it if you publish through Amazon. The part that I am still completely in the dark with, but thanks to you, Gladsley, and your kicks in the pants, which I am so grateful for, I'm learning about the whole marketing end of things, because as I learned, a book doesn't sell itself. So, what a surprise that was.
Yeah, there are several things in there that I wanted to kind of like mention and then dig a bit deeper. You start with one project, one challenge, write a book. And then you're like, cool, I got it. Like, what do I have? What do I do with this pile of sheets? And then you're like, and then you start figuring it out. And I find it like, it's almost like someone opening a business, right? It's like, it's kind of your business now. You are your business, you are your product, and your book is it's the one of your products, right? How you're going to sell it. I'm pretty sure you don't think about marketing when you're starting to write. The challenge of writing is one thing, and this is basically breaking down one massive problem into smaller chunks. First I need to write it, then I need to learn how to publish it. That's like after I publish, how to get a cover. Do I get a cover designer? Do I get an editor? So it's a bunch of chunks that you need to learn. And in the end of the day, when you look back, at least from what I've seen, all the challenges you described, like, oh my God, it's a long, long list of things that you had to do just to be able to publish one book. And you took one route, right? The self-publishing indie kind of like pathway. I find this really, it's inspiring to me because this is a path I told you back then when we met that it's a path that I want to go after. And when I wrote to you, and you mentioned that, like, a lot of people, they give this information, they're helpful. I'm paraphrasing you here, right? They give you the information if you want to go down this route. And this is basically what I found out when I talked to you the first time. It was about that. It's like, I wanted to know a bit more. And then you told me your story. Now you're telling me way more in details. It encourages me to say, look, she did it. She actually is giving me like the shortcuts in here. And even the part of marketing that we discussed, this is like how I can pay you back.
Yeah.
How to do that? How do you promote? And what can you learn? The same thing that you've learned about writing the first book, and then you went back into the first draft of the first book, and then you kind of somewhat rewrote the whole thing because you kind of like had the idea and you're like, okay, now I'm going to use the skills that I've learned. I'm pretty sure you're going to apply for the second book.
I actually have had the second book edited and formatted in the software. So when the time comes, hopefully Rob would have the time to, you know, design the cover. Hopefully his rate hasn't gone up. But these are
Well,
these are small things, right?
to be honest, nowadays you have AI to help in so many things. I don't know if you thought about that too. I've seen some AI for image creation that they create really amazing things. I'm not trying to kill creatives. No, 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 far from it. But sometimes even like creating this style, you can kind of gist some ideas. I remember you mentioned about like creating a mood board, talking about, so this is like a creative process. And maybe from my kind of past kind of work with designers creating mood boards, it's like show me something that you like, so me as an artist I'll be able to produce what you want. And I think AI in that sense, not for the writing but for creating kind of like the illustration, the cover or any other illustration that you may have within the book, you can help in that process of this is kind of like this style that I like. So it could help out, it could speed up things as well. And I know a lot of creatives that they use AI to generate their final artwork or the final kind of product because, well, it speeds up sometimes their process as well.
Interesting.
And even I'm pretty sure some of the questions that it has, like, how do I do this? My inclination now is like, oh, I go to ChatGPT, I'm going to Claude, and I'm going to ask the question. I'm going to Perplexity, and the information for some of
Mm,
these challenges that you may have had, I would try differently than before AI.
interesting. Yeah. So actually, that leads me to the next frontier, shall we say, of the marketing journey, which is to really master email marketing, newsletter marketing, which from from what I've heard in the indie world, people who read books still read email. They're readers essentially. Like you said, they want to connect with a real person. So a newsletter is a chance to stay engaged with your current readership, maybe entice new readers, but mostly just to build a community around, you know, not just the book, but your life, who you are, and all that kind of thing. Um, but one thing that makes newsletters really stand out is when you have a little mascot or you have a little, like, really great graphics. So maybe AI could help with that. So to be,
I'm biased, and if you need help, I can help you with that too. But I think, well, I'll be able to help a lot in this design. And the thing is, right now, you are at the point where you need to think more about the business side of writing
yeah,
than the writing itself. And this will make you a more competent published author,
yeah.
because you're going to be able to know the perils. And even for me, I'm thinking like, okay, can you can you teach me? It's like, take my money here, because I want to write. When I sit down to write, I want to get this out of the door as soon as possible. So I'm not gonna take like, hopefully not 3 months. That's what I want to do.
Mm,
But it's a different kind of book that I have in my mind. It's not fiction. So this could be, but there's part of me, because I have my own kids, that I do have ideas for stories for kids,
yeah,
and they come with illustrations.
yes.
The illustrations are in my mind. Doesn't mean that I can draw them. So,
Exactly.
this is something that I think we cannot shy away from the fact that AI came to the world, and it will, well, I can see a lot of books already written only by AI and someone puts their name on it. We're not going to the ethics of this conversation because this can be a huge kind of like
Yeah.
episode discussion, and I could bring many people in here. But somehow we need to kind of like distinguish what's a human product,
Mm.
right? What Carolyn writes and what the AI writes, or what I forgot the name of the illustrator that did your cover.
Oh, Rob Ball.
Rob.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. So what Rob produced against one of these AIs that produce amazing images.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my personal opinion, right now AI is here, and the next step is, oh, this was handmade by a human.
Mm.
This is worth gold.
Interesting.
AI is too perfect
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
too generalist.
Yeah. So interesting. Well, and then the question is, well, is AI a human product? And so, you know what I mean? It's like what AI makes is still dependent on the human mind. Somewhere back in there, somewhere back down the line.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, I know that there is this third book being cooked.
Yes.
So how you're gonna do this, how you're gonna publish the second one? Do you have an idea? Will you take the same steps that you took? Will you try something different?
Yeah. I mean, the game plan for now is to say, okay, let's take the self publishing thing to the end of the road with Adam and the Witch Queen. Let's build a newsletter community. Let's build a mailing list. I've set myself a soft target to get up to 100 people by the end of this calendar year, and maybe 1,000 by the end of 2025. That's my goal. So from that point, do I have enough momentum? Do I have enough um, word of mouth that people are that the book has recouped its costs? Because if I'm able to do that, and then I'm able to build what people call back catalog. So once Adam is kind of ticking along, oh, it's time for another one to come out. And then another process I have to do right in the middle of that. Do you remember at the very end, or in the second book, we'll give this much away because anyway, your listeners can get the first 3 chapters for free on my website if they go and join my newsletter, read the first 3 chapters. They will see that there's this tree and there's this neighbor who it does not maintain his yard. The tree ends up, the leaves of the tree end up clogging a drain, which creates this huge puddle in the street. I will say no more. But this tree comes into play in the third novel. Same neighbor, same tree. And so what I'm going to write, I'm going to press pause on the writing of the third novel so that I can write what people call a reader magnet. It's going to be a short story. It's about 10,000 words long. And it's the story of how that neighbor had his own adventure into another world and came back with the, I guess, the seeds of that tree. So,
Oh my god, you're like, now I things make sense.
yeah.
All right.
So how can I encourage people to sign up for my newsletter? Well, I have to give them something, right? And what can I give them to keep them engaged and a member of my reader community? These are some things that I need to put into place to build a strong newsletter following.
I think in that sense, I, we were discussing before this episode, right? I had a call earlier today, and I was talking to someone, an artist, and we were talking about it. Like, when I like a piece of art, I like it, and if I get to know the artist and I get to know more about the personal traits of the artists, that piece gets even more meaningful to me.
Yeah.
And I think the whole thing about the newsletter and getting a following
Hmm.
that you're looking for, and funny enough, you said 1,000 subscribers. Like there's something that we talk about, the 1,000 true followers.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so if those ones, they will kind of buy, or they are really into whatever you are producing, then you're good. Okay, I'm pretty sure you're doing that because you like it, right? There are challenges that you need to cross that you didn't know, because just like the writing and driving in the darkness, that was for the car, but you kept doing that. You had to drive through other dark roads to ship the book.
Yeah.
That's what we say as a product. You have to ship it.
Yeah.
Okay, and you keep doing it, and now there's like, okay, now I want to make my life easier as well, and I want to bring my word back to those who kind of get to know my first story. How do I poke the bear to say, look, there is another one coming, and
Yeah.
look, they are connected, and I like this, I really love this idea. That's why I'm like, oh my god, you just told me something that I didn't know. I'm like, okay, I need to know that short story. I need to. And I think
I do
this is a
too.
great way.
That's all I know. I'm going to have to drive down that dark road till I get to know it
Yeah,
too. Yeah.
yeah. I I find it amazing. And the third book, I want to talk a little about the third book that you started fiddling. So we're talking about the second book that you're gonna publish,
Hmm.
right? It's ready.
Yep.
It's been cooked. It's
Yep.
out of the oven.
Yep.
Just needs to be shipped. The third book and this short story that it's in between.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to tell me anything about? Can you give
The
me any
third
kind of
story?
spoilers?
Well,
Yeah.
sure. So, Adam and the Witch Queen is kind of a standalone. The second book that you read, the title, as far as I have titled it, is called "As Tall as the Sun is Bright," and the heroine is Rosalind. Well, in book three, Adam moves onto Rosalind's street, and they do not hit it off. She's cool. She's really kind of she's really concerned with her image. We're talking grade 8, early grade 8 here. She's really concerned with her image. Adam is the new kid in town. We know that he's, without naming it, he's like ADHD. He's like kind of in his own world, doesn't make friends easily. Transitions are hard for him. And they ended up with, like, in grade 8, if there's more than one class, there's like a cool relaxed teacher and there's the strict teacher. Well, they're in the strict teacher's class, and the strict teacher, don't you know, has sat them together, so they're not happy about that. And then thanks to this tree, I will say no more, they end up stuck together through the portal in that other world, and they're not happy.
All right. Okay. And when you're finishing this one again?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah,
ASAP.
yeah. So there is one thing that I wanted to say in that sense of when you're gonna finish it. I like. I don't know if you know about Tim Ferriss.
He's the 4-hour work week guy, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So there is one thing that he always says, like, what if this was easy to do it? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what you have to think. It's like, what if you could really write this quickly? What if you could
Yeah.
really ship the second one so I can get the third one as well,
Yeah.
and the short story? That's my kind of
For you,
gentle
Gladsley,
request.
I'll do it. Um, no, that's really great. And then knowing myself, um, the this draft that I'm working on, I know that it's not that great. But because I know that I'm going to put that aside and I'm going to give myself as much time and space, and I'll say, okay, like the last time I sat down 2 days ago, I wrote a scene. I'm like, what? No, that wasn't supposed to happen. So I'm going to rewrite that scene the way I wanted it to happen, with much more conflict. And so I can give myself space to experiment with these things, say, oh, should they do this or should they do that? Because when I know that I'm going to put that aside and I'm going to redraft the thing from start nice and tight when I'm done. So I'm following my husband's advice right now. You're going to love this. Dare to suck.
I like this. There is a book that is like, hey, you have to be comfortable being disliked.
The Courage to
Okay.
Be Disliked.
Yeah, the courage
Love
to be
that book.
disliked.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of the same thing. I'm like, it's a beginner's mind. For me, it's the same kind of mindset that you have. Like, it's a beginner's mind. I don't know. Like, you don't know this story. That's how I read it. It's like it's a dark road. You can see as far as the light can take you. Maybe it will take you to some weird curves, and it is part of the process. And then it goes down into some startup concept that we keep saying, is like, ship it.
Yeah.
Sometimes for you it's not good, but for the reader it is amazing.
Yeah.
Right, there is something about user experience that we say as well, like your users are not you,
It's
your
good.
readers are not you.
Yeah.
So sometimes we tend to not ship something because we're afraid of, it's like, no, it's not perfect. I don't deem perfect. But sometimes people are not looking for the perfect, they're looking for the imperfect.
The American writer Ann Tyler that I referred to earlier, she said that she wishes she could disown her first 4 novels. And and yet, if it were for those first 4 novels, she wouldn't have built the loyal readership that she has now. So it's really interesting to kind of think of your work with those. The theme of imperfection keeps coming up, and I guess it's okay for things, to be what they are in the timeline of your life as a creator. Yeah, it's important to know that the next time it's probably going to be a little better.
Yeah, and there is this concept that we keep comparing ourselves with great artists, with great writers, with great whatever. But the comparison that we should be doing is like, where was I 10 years ago? Where was I 5 years ago? Where was I yesterday? Where will I be tomorrow? And so on and so on. Because when you compare yourself to yourself, your past self, as you said, the other day we were having a conversation, and you're like, yeah, no, I'm like, no, like for me, you're here. You already have one book published. You have 100% more books published than I do. So for me, you're here, and you're like feeling that you're not there yet. I'm like, so we all have to pass this, and I find it that lately people are talking way more about this. They may call it imposter syndrome, whatever. But the fact is that you only have this kind of syndrome because you're aware that you have capabilities. You are trying to strive for better. But what you cannot do is not take action.
Yes.
You cannot let the fear, or this fear of being disliked, or fear to suck, stop you. You should just keep pushing through. You keep going. It's like one of the other people that came to these podcasts, Julio, he said like, yeah, they should be afraid, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't give it a try. They shouldn't take action. So
Just like
that's
motorcycle riding, I have to bring it back. So when I first started to ride, even the little Vespa, which doesn't scare me at all right now, my mouth would go completely dry. And I would get on this thing and I would go, okay, I just have to get up the ramp from the parking garage. Okay, okay, I'm alive. I'm upright. Okay. All right, I just have to get onto the street now. So, and then eventually you arrive at your destination. I would
Exactly.
get back down into the garage, turn it off, and be like, I'm alive.
And sometimes we let the fear is so big in our minds that when it comes down, I'm not gonna say that you couldn't get hurt,
Right.
especially when you were kind of starting. It's like, what would be the worst case scenario? You would fall and maybe you would break an arm. You would get some scratches. So it's just the thing about pushing the limits and being uncomfortable. You kind of get used to this weird feeling,
Yes.
and you're like, and then you we realize that we're more resilient than we believe we are.
So true.
I just wanted to wrap up with some mini questions
Yeah.
that I didn't actually prepare them, but I really wanted to know. Which is the one book that you usually give as a gift to people, or you tell them that you should read this book?
It's usually the thing I'm reading. Like there isn't one book, there's a million. I mean, if I were going to give you like my right answer, honestly, this may surprise you. My top favorite book in the entire world is the Bible. I think everyone should read it. I give it as gifts all the time. But at the moment, I'm reading a whole bunch of books on light and how light impacts our health and circadian rhythms. And so those are probably books that I'm going to give to people soon.
That question for me always throws me like, I don't know, I have so many books, and every time I get a new book, I'm like, oh my god, I want to teach what I just read about it. I just learned. Okay, second question: what is the one weird thing about you that most people don't know?
I always forget to wash my glasses. They probably noticed that. It's my like really bad habit.
Last one. I really like to ask this question to people. If you were able to go back in time before you took this journey of writing books and you were able to talk to yourself, what kind of advice would you give you back then?
I think all the things we said, like don't be afraid. Just start. Show up to the work every day. It will happen. When you need to know it, the information will appear. You can do this.
All right. Thank you so much. So, for those who stuck with us until now, where they can find you, where they can, just like me, write to you, get to
Mm,
know how can get your book and even the freebie.
yeah. So my website is pretty easy to remember, carolynjohnsonbooks.com. And there's you can read a little bit more about me. There's a FAQ. You can sign up for the newsletter. There's links to order the book directly there. Um, for some reason, Amazon, I think, is trying to clear it out. So it's really, really cheap on Amazon. So I would say go there.
Buy directly from
Yeah,
you.
exactly. And then, yeah, if people want to get the first three chapters of the second book, definitely sign up for the newsletter. Um, the link
Yeah.
is there.
All right. Perfect. I'll leave the link as well in the description of this episode. So, Caroline, I just would like to thank you so much for this conversation. It's a pleasure to have you here, and it was great to have here in this podcast.
Thanks for the opportunity, Leslie.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care of you.